going on, everyone? There had been a lot of talk about Russell Westbrook and the Lakers and a potential trade, right? What is going to happen? Which team is going to finally cave and end up taking Russell Westbrook? The Lakers do have options, right? You have the Indiana Pacers deal, although they have like the highest asking price out of anybody. You have the Hornets that have been floated around for some time, but I think that's kind of dead. At least the Lakers, I don't think they'd want any of those pieces, especially trying to preserve long-term salary. And how much are the Hornets willing to give up now that the Bridges thing has worked out? The Knicks are another team that may make a ton of sense as well. They want to move off of some of their vet guys, Evan Fournier, Derrick Rose, and something along the lines of, I know some people want Randall. I want them to stay as far away from Randall as possible, but very likely it'll end up being Cam Reddish, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose if they were to do a deal like that. And then you have, of course, the Jazz deal, which is in my opinion, the most likely scenario is the one that's going to happen if any trade were to happen, just because the Utah Jazz really need to move off of guys. They have to get their roster down to 15 players. And if you don't do the sweep with the Westbrook deal, then you're kind of stuck moving these guys individually. And you can't do like one-for-one player swaps or take on a bad contract. Do you really want to take something like a several-year deal like Miami? Like Miami's got like Duncan Robinson. Like I'm sure Miami would love to move off of Duncan Robinson if you want to take his 4 years, like $18 million a year or whatever it is. Like if you want to give us Bogdanovich, like sure, like let's do that. Or Bogdanovich and whatever, Beasley or something. We'll give you some bad contracts or something. Like yeah, of course that would happen. But I don't see that making sense for the Jazz. But speaking of Miami is another team that has been rumored off and on for some time. Now, whether a deal would actually come to light for Westbrook, they just keep being mentioned as a destination for Russell Westbrook. We've heard it for months now. And once again, it has been brought up. So there was a report that came out a couple hours ago, and this is what was said. It makes sense. An Eastern Conference executive told Fox Sports, Rick Bucher, Miami believes they can rehabilitate anyone. And this is in regards to a Miami trade for Russell Westbrook. That it would make a lot of sense because Miami believes that they can turn any player in the league around just because of their culture, their system. Got guys like Udonis Haslem, Jimmy Butler, stuff like that. But the Eastern Conference exec continued on. Bucher wrote that team executives and scouts could only come up with one potential landing spot for Westbrook, and it was the Heat. He noted team president Pat Riley. He has a history of cultivating fiery competitive players from Alonzo Mourning to Brian Grant to Jimmy Butler, which is an excellent point. Again, you have a guy in Russell Westbrook that was in a position as, Jimmy Butler's and stuff like that, Alonzo Mourning's, Brian Grant's, guys like that, where it's like, is this a guy that can blend in, that can fit in, that can, that is not a locker room problem or, temper the expectations, things like that. And look what Jimmy Butler's been able to do in Miami. I mean, he's completely reinvented himself. He fits that culture beautifully. And one of the things about Russ, however you feel about Russ, he is definitely Miami Heat culture guy. Like the type of players that Miami loves, Russ is that kind of player. Now, on top of that, they really need help. Like the team that they currently have, I don't think is enough for them to make it to the finals. Jimmy Butler can't be having to put up 40 points a night in and night out, for you guys to even be in contention or in games in the playoffs. Like I just don't see it. You guys, the Miami Heat lost a couple key pieces. Jimmy Butler needs another go-to guy, another go-to scorer, a guy that can kind of come in, take the load off of Jimmy Butler. Because Jimmy Butler, he's not a naturally gifted scorer. He's not a Kevin Durant, something along those. He's just so strong and just willed and just, determined that he just generates buckets because of just pure determination. He's not a naturally gifted scorer and shooter, right? And Miami, the other thing is too, Miami has the guys and the defense to be really good with Russ. They'll be able to open the lanes because Bam can step out, shoot from the mid-range, stuff like that. He would be a solid fit. Now, would he be somebody that Miami would really consider? Possibly. Miami has some really bad contracts. And unless Pat Riley really believes like this team is still a contender, which I don't think they are, I still think there are 4 or 5 teams I would take over Miami right now. Off the top of my head, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, I would take Boston. I think you can make an argument maybe for the Cavs, depending on how they shape up and how consistent they are. Like, it's just this team is old. They have a bunch of really bad contracts. There's a lot of question marks. They lost some really key component guys. I don't know if Miami's going to be able to survive that grind of an 82 game series, get into the playoffs, and be able to do that. I mean, Jimmy Butler had to literally put on some heroics. How much longer can Jimmy Butler do that? How much longer can Jimmy Butler go into games and put up 40 for you to just be in that game? Not even necessarily win it, just to be in it. Like, I don't think this team can do it. I mean, we saw the same thing in the finals against the Lakers. Jimmy Butler, the game that they won, he had to put up ridiculous stat lines. He doesn't have anybody else that night in and night out can go get you 20 every single night. Russ is that guy. Russ is a guy that night in and night out, he'll go get you 20. As the third option and as a terrible fit with the Lakers, he still got you 18. So if the Heat could go and get a guy like Russ, it might make a lot of sense for them. Not just that, but you're board wiping your salary, which the Miami Heat could really desperately use. But the big question is, what would the trade look like? Because in the most recent report, there was no proposal. There was no like, oh, this is what Miami would be willing to give up, anything like that. But we do have other reports from the past to go off of. And one of the original talks was that the Lakers would be trading Russell Westbrook for Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, and Duncan Robinson. And the reason for this is, Duncan Robinson, bad contract, Kyle Lowry, bad contract, you move off that, you take Russ. But they could be solid rotation guys for the Lakers, especially if Duncan Robinson can get back to being that shooter that many believe he can be. Duncan Robinson, if he can be that guy, that might be your shooter for the Lakers. You get that point guard and Kyle Lowry that could be the defender. Him and Patrick Beverley could play side by side. You got that sort of pit bull backcourt that could be really solid. And then Tyler Hero, a young asset, young player that could start, come off the bench, be really solid for you. But Miami's got to include something in that deal that's worth a value to Lakers, because Lakers aren't just going to take, 2 long-term salaries, which I still don't think the Lakers would do this regardless, even with Tyler Hero. Even if the Lakers didn't have to give up a single pick, I don't think they'd do this deal. Like, if Miami's just like, look, we need another go-to guy. We want Russ. We want to move off Lowry and Duncan Robinson, which there are reports that Miami's looking to upgrade Kyle Lowry, and they don't know if he's going to be that guy. There's a lot of talks about his weight and his, and just him being able to stay healthy and be on the court. So, again, could make a lot of sense. But if the Lakers seem determined to keep their salary space, and this completely ruins that, because Tyler Hero needs a new contract. Now, financially, this works because you have Duncan Robinson's making like 18 and some change. You have Kyle Lowry that's making like 28 million. And then you have Tyler Hero that's making about $4.5 million. So it comes out to about like 53 million, which the Lakers could take on up to, I believe it's 56, 57 million on just Russ. But still, I don't think the Lakers would do this. I mean, it would give them some solid depth. It gives you that shooter that you want and Duncan Robinson, but he was almost unplayable last year for Miami. So if he continues to be that guy, he's a terrible, terrible contract. Kyle Lowry, again, a lot of questions about his weight, a lot of questions about his, him being able to stay healthy and be on the court. If he can, he's definitely a solid contributor. And then Tyler Hero would be the real prize for the Lakers. He's the guy that could fit now and for the future. But how high basically to me, it would come down to how high do the Lakers value Tyler Hero? They think Tyler Hero could be a guy that could be your third guy and be your third scorer and really kind of, change the tides of the Lakers? Or do they look at it, and also a guy that you could build around for the future? Do they look at him as just like another role guy? I don't know. I think if anyone says no, I think it's the Heat. I think the Lakers say no. I think the Heat would love to move off of these guys, and I think the Heat would love to take on Russ even for a year just to get off these salaries. I do. And I understand that this is a Laker channel, and some people are probably looking at it and like, of course you're going to say that, but it makes more sense for Miami than it does for the Lakers. Like, yeah, it might suck to lose Tyler Hero, but Tyler Hero can't even start on this team. And Pat Riley told Tyler Hero, "You're not starting until you can play defense." And I don't see Tyler Hero all of a sudden becoming a top defender in this league. I think he is on Miami, at least for the next several seasons, destined to be the sixth man. I think that is it. That is his role with Miami. He is going to be the sixth man. How long is he going to be okay with that? And are they really going to max him out to just be the sixth man? I don't know. I don't think so. But I think Pat Riley wants to get off Kyle Lowry. I think he realizes that was a terrible mistake. And I think he wants to move off of Duncan Robinson because Duncan Robinson, Duncan Robinson completely fell out of rotation for stretches. So I just think if Pat Riley could move off of these two contracts, I think he would trade Tyler Hero. I think he would trade Tyler Hero in a heartbeat if he could move off of both these contracts. Because then essentially all you have next after this season, all you have is Bam and Jimmy Butler. Maybe then you go get a Kyrie or something like that and you just kind of retool this team, or go get a Gary Trent Jr. or something like that, or, and maybe a Miles Turner or whatever. Because you basically have an entire new board wipe. You got to kind of run it rough for this season, but if Westbrook could be a solid guy for you, I think Westbrook doesn't make you worse than you already are. I think Westbrook makes you at least neutral, if not better. And I do. I think Pat Riley would move off. If it meant moving off of Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson, I think Tyler Hero's gone. But, is this something that you would see happening? As always, this is a discussion. Those are my thoughts and opinions. And I pass the question on to you. Do you think Russ in Miami makes sense? Do you think the Lakers say no? Do you think the Heat say no? Again, I understand that this is a Laker channel, but just think of it. Like, why would Miami turn that down? If that was a legit offer, Russell Westbrook, and let's say a first. Let's say Russell Westbrook and a first. Why in the world would Miami say no? Like, you basically clear your entire books. You're probably just as good as you are now. And now you can just completely retool. I think Pat Riley would take this deal in a heartbeat if this was something that was on the table. I just don't think the Lakers would do it because the Lakers don't want to take on that salary and that cap. You're talking they'd be taking on 50, well, actually, because you have to re-sign or extend Tyler Hero, talking about taking on like probably $75, $80 million over the next 3-4 years. I just don't think that's something that's going to happen. I don't think the Lakers would want to do that because this would basically be your team for the next 4 years, 3 years, assuming LeBron doesn't opt out after that third year. So you got to be damn sure if you're the Lakers that this team is a contender. But I think if anyone says no, it's the Lakers. But, do you agree? Do you feel the same way? Do you not? However you feel about it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.